Welcome back to the Cumby Show, where we tell like it is and we don't care how you feel. And we just got the most recent updated college football playoff rankings. This is coming right after week 11. And there's been a slight change to the top 8, or top 4, basically. Georgia jumps Ohio State. They are the new number 1 team in the college football playoff rankings. And you've got Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3, and rounding out the top 4 still is FSU. Your first few out, you've got Washington at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, and Alabama at 8. Do I agree with this? For the most part, I do. For the most part, I agree with this. I definitely do think that Georgia deserves the number 1 spot. They have a dominating win last week against Ole Miss. They beat a top 10 team in Mizzou 2 weeks ago. Through the own committee's ranking. They just moved Mizzou up to number 9. So I think Georgia does have the better wins over FSU, Michigan, and Ohio State. So I think, especially after that dominating win against Ole Miss last week, I think Georgia deserves number 1. I agree with that. You can flip-flop Ohio State and Michigan. That will work itself out as the season goes on. The last game of the regular season, those 2 teams play one another, so we will get a winner out of those 2 teams. The winner of that will most likely 99.9% go on to win the Big Ten championship. That team will get into the playoffs. Those 2 teams will work itself out. FSU. FSU has looked very vulnerable these last couple of weeks. Most teams look like they're starting to improve and get better. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon. Most teams are starting to look better as the season goes on. FSU, not so much. They're starting to show a lot more concerns, a lot more weaknesses. I'm questioning that team more now than I have at the beginning of the season. But nonetheless, if they win out, they win the ACC championship, they're in the playoffs. That will work itself out. I think the ACC's only hope to get a team into the playoffs is if FSU wins out and they win the ACC championship. I think that is the only hope. With the strength of schedule in the ACC, I think if you have a 1-loss conference champion, I don't think they make it into the playoff this year. I'm sitting just outside of that. Obviously, you've got Washington and then Oregon. You've got Washington over Oregon because Washington is undefeated, with Oregon's only loss coming against Washington. You have to take that into account. Now, here today, even after multiple weeks after seeing Washington beat Oregon, if those 2 teams were to play again tomorrow, I'm taking Oregon in that matchup. And that will come into the that matchup will come in the conference playoffs there. I think that if Washington beats Oregon again for the second time and they go undefeated, they will secure that last 4th spot. So you have to think Ohio State or Michigan will fall out because they will lose. So I think if Washington goes undefeated, they secure that last 4th spot. Now, if Oregon turns around and beats Washington, I think that Oregon jumps everyone and they secure that last 4th spot. Here's where things can kind of get interesting. Texas is sitting at number 7. Texas does not control their own destiny. They have to have a couple things go right for them. First off, they need a few more teams to lose. They need FSU to lose, whether it's in the regular season or their conference championship. They need FSU to lose. And they also need Washington or Oregon to lose another game that's not in the conference championship. So Texas basically needs, or there's 2 games remaining for both Washington and Oregon. Texas needs one of those 2 teams to lose these next 2 weeks. Because if every team above them, obviously besides Ohio State and Michigan, if every team above them wins out, they're still out of the playoffs because of that loss against Oklahoma. That's a tough loss, especially considering that Oklahoma has now lost, 2 games? It's a tough loss for them. So Texas does not control their own destiny. Even if they win out, they still have to have a few other things go right for them. For Alabama, if Alabama wins out and they go to the SEC championship and they beat Georgia, I still don't think they necessarily control their own destiny. I still think they will need a couple things to go right for them. First off, you got to think if you beat Georgia, you're knocking Georgia out of the top 4. So that goes away a spot. Ohio State and Michigan, if one of those 2 teams will be left out, that gives you 2 spots. Now, here's where things get interesting. That means that the winner of Ohio State or Michigan will get in. So you already have a spot. You already have a spot selected. The winner of Washington and Oregon gets in. That's 2 spots selected. If FSU wins out, there's 3 spots selected. And then obviously, if Texas wins out, that's 4 spots selected. You're still left out. So Alabama would need to win out and then either have FSU lose the conference championship, Texas to lose another game, whether it be in the regular season or the championship, or Washington or Oregon to lose another game besides the conference championship to get in. So I don't think Alabama completely still controls their own destiny. So there's still a lot of football left, even though we only have 2 regular season games left and then the championship game left to play and the conference championship game left to play. There's still a lot of football left to decide the top 4 teams getting into the playoffs. I will be glad when the 12-team playoff comes along because it's getting interesting. It's getting very interesting. But nonetheless, that is the updated college football playoff rankings coming off week 11. If it was up to me, if I had to guess who I think would make it into the playoffs, I would have to say I think Georgia gets in at number 1. I think Michigan beats Ohio State. I think Michigan gets it in at number 2. I do think that FSU wins out. And I think that Oregon turns around, beats Washington in their playoffs, and I think Oregon sneaks in over the Big 12 champion Texas. So that's my predictions. Georgia, Michigan, FSU, Oregon. That's my predictions for the 4 who make it. But we'll see. Still a lot of football left. I just want to get on here and make a quick video about the updated college football playoff rankings. Like I said, we had a small change up. Georgia at number 1, Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3, FSU at 4, Washington at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, and Alabama at 8. Other than that, over and out.